Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome in to the Maize and Blue Reviews. Good afternoon, Michigan football. So good to be with you here on this, where are we at? The 21st of July. So really didn't need that, but I might keep that sitting right there. Thanks so much for joining us. Got big news surrounding Michigan. You may have heard, but if you have not, just hang in there for a minute or two because we're going to get right to it. The commissioner of the conference has spoken. So that's the breaking news. It's always good if you're someone who's just joining this show for the first time. Welcome in. Join in the feedback. I take a look at it throughout the show. And today I'm going to be interested in hear your opinion on what the commissioner had to say to the Committee on Infractions back in June. Here's Rip. I told Rip that I like those Mexican Coca-Colas that come in a bottle. They charge $2-3 or whatever else for it, but really expensive. Breaking news on the cartel Cokes. They could be gone with the news. I don't remember where I saw it or how I saw it, or if it was maybe just something in my imagination, but the U.S. is planning on doing away with high fructose corn syrup when they make Coca-Cola. So if they use cane sugar, that was the whole appeal of the Mexican Cokes. And so if the United States is using real sugar, cane sugar, it's bye-bye to the Mexican Cokes. I don't know how that's all going to play out, but I do know this, that there was a point where high fructose corn syrup, soda's bad enough, but high fructose corn syrup was really affecting me, and it moved over. It wasn't drinking, pop every single day, but I could tell it took, I don't know how long, maybe a month, whatever. I could really tell the difference after a month or two of cane sugar, the difference between high fructose corn syrup, where I couldn't before. It tastes much better. So that's good news overall. Not good if you're depending on Coca-Cola cane sugar down in Mexico. Not good for them, but maybe good for everybody else. But all right, let's jump on in. I welcome you in. I know that I had a thumbnail up. Jim Scarcelli not here today. He's got something going on with Michigan, which I look forward to hearing about his experience coming up on Wednesday when he'll join us. But the former Wolverine, usually here on a Monday. I don't want anybody to panic or anything else. He's got, I don't know if it's at a golf outing. He's speaking at something or he's involved with something with Michigan. We'll let him tell the story coming up on Wednesday when he will join us. But, today we have the 27. You like recruiting in 26 of the 22 players that Michigan's got. I asked you on Friday how much attention you started to pay to the 2027 class, and there are some that's like, they're always paying attention if it's anything Michigan related. Well, Michigan was able to secure their first commitment for not this upcoming season, but the following season, the 2027 year. We'll tell you all about that. Scar was and is going to show some video on Oklahoma's John Mateer. I have that written down here. I'll give you a word on what I think of Mateer and what I have seen from the quarterback who Michigan will see in their second game of the year, their first road game, another night game when they go down to Norman to take on Oklahoma, a game that everyone is looking forward to watching coming up week 2, which is September the 6th, coming out of Labor Day weekend. But we do start with this big news. Tony Petitti is the commissioner of the Big Ten, and he says Michigan has suffered enough. Now, you got to take this in. So Dan Wetzel comes out with a series of tweets today. And if you're a Michigan fan, maybe this was music to your ears. If you're a rival of Michigan, you probably dig in and stay with the same approach that you always have, beating us. Here comes the hammer, whatever. But let's just go through it and see what it says. And I'll tell you what my reaction is. I want to hear what your reaction is, and then we can discuss it. So Wetzel says Tony Petitti sent the NCAA a letter arguing that Michigan deserved no further punishment in the Stalions case. And he goes on to say that the letter was read at Michigan's June infractions hearing. Petitti saying that the 3-game suspension the Big Ten handed down on Jim Harbaugh is sufficient punishment in the case for the program. All right, now that was not something that I was expecting. I don't know about you, but I was not expecting to hear anything from the commissioner. Certainly something that you would say, oh, hey, backing Michigan, which is completely different than what we have seen from the commissioner. Now, the weird part about this is that the commissioner is the one that's blown this up and has made this into this like gigantic situation. And now he's talking about, well, this thing that I blew up in 23, now that was enough. I brought the hammer in 2023, which is, it is weird. Tony Petitti made a mountain and it from a molehill in 2023. And a lot of the damage was done by him. If I take you back to that season, when I heard that there was potential for Michigan for Harbaugh to get suspended in season, I scoffed at it. I told people on the Maize and Blue review that if they were looking for my opinion or not, I gave it to them. I said, there will be no suspension. In all my years of watching college football and watching all the rules violations and everything else, there's no suspension in season. Preposterous. There's no way it'll happen. It happened. And Petitti, it not only happened, but he didn't have the guts to call Michigan, to call the athletic director, to call the head coach and tell him what his decision is. He just let it spill out there where Jim Harbaugh found out on a plane the morning or the day before, I guess, of heading into Happy Valley, which, is not the way. And anybody, look, I'm not in any leadership role. That's not the way to handle things. That's the way he handled it. And then he came up with a 3-game suspension. I've seen all down through the years, and it was so shocking to me that all down through the years when I had seen suspensions and coaches having to sit out or players having to sit out, a lot of times it's against a weak little Sisters of the Poor. It's the beginning of the year. Jim Harbaugh had to sit out. Michigan was 9-0, and he had to sit out at Penn State, a top 10 team. Then he had to just sit out the next weekend, another Big Ten game on the road when Michigan was undefeated. And then he had to sit out for the Ohio State game. I mean, so part of this, Petitti, I'm bagging on him for him, the one that blew all this up, but he's correct. Yes, this should be enough. His premise is correct. The punishment in real time of 2 Big Ten games and the Ohio State game, 2 top 10 teams, it was it seemed preposterous at the time, and it was. And this was Petitti in his first year as Big Ten commissioner, who had all Michigan fans' heads spinning and saying, "Oh, well, there were a lot of most people agreeing with me. Like, there's no way that he would ever do anything like this," and then he did. It's just weird for him, and now he's standing up for Michigan, like, yes, this is enough. Well, but Petitti, you couldn't be coming at you couldn't be speaking out of both sides of your mouth if we were watching you and you had 2 mouths or something, whatever. On one hand, he laid down this in real time that I had never seen before, and you never have either, because that's how it went down. this big-time suspension right in the middle of an undefeated season. What a hammer. That really was a hammer. What the heck was going on there? He stepped in and used his authority of a sportsmanship clause or however he did it. And everybody looked at this and were like, oh my God, we've never seen anything. Michigan must be the worst ever. That was the perception. You could almost understand outside of Michigan how everyone looked at this as like, wow, it must have been really bad for this to happen in real time. That's never happened before. Most of the time in the history, no, every time in the course of the history of college football, you would see infractions and you would see things. And almost every time that head coach had been fired or had moved on, mostly fired. And then all the players were always gone. And then people were always like, wow, this is like after the fact. And now you're serving up. This isn't the way to go. So Petitti jumps out there and does something that nobody's ever done and suspends a team right in the middle of the teeth of their toughest games. And the whole thing, I don't have to keep recounting it, but it was unprecedented. And so now, back in June, he decides to say, nope, it's enough. So how should you feel as a Michigan fan? I noticed that a lot of Michigan fans were like, that's right, this is ridiculous. Okay, well, I know everybody's thought that from the beginning. But you got the very guy who's the one that made this the story that it is. He should have let that play out. The weird part is the after the fact now, because, Michigan fans, you had to go through all the drama, and as it was going on, I mean, it just added to just the craziness and everything. But Michigan wins it all. And it was like, to hell with Tony Petitti and, hell with all the suspension and everything else. But, did they serve enough? Yes. Yes, they have. How much is the Infractions Committee going to be like, okay, Petitti at the time thought this was such a big deal that, he was going to ace him out for 3 games, Harbaugh. And now he's like, well, that was enough. I don't know about how they're going to look at it. I do look at it like this. We've been through this all kinds of different ways, and everybody thinks about things differently, and everybody has their points and the things that they're leaning on. And a lot of it, it's people that you trust. Your Michigan voice, who you hear and tells you this is what they think. Well, I'm going to tell you what I think. That if Michigan is able to, when this is over, if there is no postseason ban, if there's no vacated games, there shouldn't be. And if the 2 games that we have seen reports out that more will sit out, the Nebraska game and the CMU game, if that ends up being the punishment, then that is a gigantic win for Michigan. Then this will all be looked upon as, man, what a fanfare and all of this talk, and oh my God. And the Michigan fans, they will have a gigantic W. They will have won. If that ends up being it. Now then it goes to degrees if it's anything different. And I'm not going over every, possible permutation of what it could, but if they added on another game and moved it up to the first 3, which I actually think that would be my guess on what they would do. That was my guess before this. I still think that's going to be it, because then they can say, oh yeah, we weren't totally just, listening to Michigan. We did this. And then however they can try to, whatever the violations or the recruiting violations, I don't know how punitive those are going to be. But if you look at them, and we'll look at them pretty quick, and they'll be along all this stuff. But if it ends up looking at it and say Michigan can survive this easily, these are minor violations. If that's it, well, then it's still a W. And so I have thought all along that it was going to be a little bit worse than what Michigan fans thought. That not that there was going to be any postseason bans or vacated games, because that's when you're getting into the territory of that was going to be BS. But I zeroed in on where they can put in the recruiting violations and what they can do. I was thinking that those were probably going to hurt a little bit more than people were thinking. Oh, no, we'll just spend the money and there'll be nothing. There'll be nothing there. They can overcome it all. And maybe they will. But that's just, my prediction on that when it comes down to it. But, then you get to the mad nasses who are just, going crazy and want heads to roll and are acting like this is partly because Petitti made it that way. Look at what the commissioner did to you, and they're all just hopped up on this, all this. It was never going to be that bad. So it's going to be less than that. But does this news today, that's good news that the commissioner did this, but and hopefully they do listen to it, because that's what I thought myself. And a lot of other people, when they're going in and they feel like they got to be, suspending more and hitting him, and then Michigan is a program, they hit him. They hit him hard already. I know that they ended up winning the games, but I'll be damned if Petitti didn't try to ruin Michigan's national championship season. So I know they ended up getting through, but that was the hell. And, I tell you, if Michigan would have lost one of those games, old Petitti here, I mean, I think that Petitti's still the same. If you're a Michigan fan in your eyes, this guy tried to sabotage Michigan's championship season, where he could have been like every other commissioner, every other, and kicked this one down the road like he should have. But instead, whatever it was that he wanted to stand out, he was caving to pressure to the right, whatever it was, he damn near ruined Michigan's championship season, and he didn't. So that he wrote a letter saying, well, what I did and, how big of a deal it was. And that was enough. It's still a little it's ringing a little hollow to me now that I've got the commissioners, but he's correct. It rings hollow, but the commissioner is correct that Michigan has served a tough punishment, and it should be enough. But look, if Michigan, so he was saying, read that exactly again, because I believe that he was saying that everything's over. There should be no even suspension of more. Petitti argued that the 3-game suspension by the Big Ten handed down on Jim Harbaugh is sufficient punishment in the case for the program. So nothing. Now, look, if it ends up being nothing, it's a win if Michigan gets Moore gets the 2 games and, they can work through whatever violations that they came up with are a fine. Fine. It's a W for Michigan. But if somehow the College on Infractions Committee is like, oh, the commissioner's spoken, let's listen to him. He's right. Wipe it all off. Nothing. Then what's even better than well, I don't know. I don't think that. But if then there's I feel like there should be a parade. If everything is wiped out, not only is that a W for Michigan, but every single Michigan fan that took to their keyboard for the last 3 years, 2 years, and said at every turn that this was preposterous, that this was a joke, that they will be in everything that they were putting out there. I feel like they should feel good about their position then, justified, and everything that they did. So you've got this letter, and if it means anything at all, it might not. But it is news, moving it forward towards the Big Ten Media Days, which start tomorrow. There was a lot of people, myself included, that thought there would be some forwarding of this story before they met up in Vegas. And here they are. Now let's look. A lot of people, let's see if our people are ready for this news and if they have any thoughts on what's going on. Yeah, DJ, I don't know what that means. Scott wants to put the investigation vindicated is what I was going to say. The Michigan fans, for some reason, I was searching for the word from all the Michigan fans that were at every turn putting a stop sign up saying this was a joke. This was there was nothing to this. This has always been a hit job. Those folks, and I don't know if I put the media that have been, cheerleading for Michigan in the same, but why not? I mean, if it ends up being where nothing happens, then everybody that was out there standing up and sticking their chest out for Michigan is vindicated. All of you. So congratulations. Now we don't know if that's going to happen, but we'll see. You could be vindicated. Scott's talking 4 tight ends will play for Michigan. Well, if you consider Max Bredesen a tight end, and I do, and you can say, he's an H-back. All right, H-back, tight end are kind of the same thing. There's one. Klein is 2. Hansen is 3. So I'm sure that those 3 guys, Klein, Bredesen, and Hansen, are going to play. I'm not sure about Priestcorn's health. Did he not get hurt practicing, warming up in the ReliaQuest Bowl? If that was a knee, that would put him, and I don't know if it is. I don't know. I know that he suffered some kind of injury. If it was a knee, that could put his season in jeopardy. But if he would be, I could see him. He was the highest rated out of all those guys. Not that always means everything, but it means something. So maybe there could be 4. If you want to, and I don't know about this. This is the one thing where, spring games. Jalen Hoffman had a great spring game. He was the MVP of the spring game. Hoffman, he caught that late pass and took it down the sideline for a touchdown. But before that, he was the number 1 target for Bryce Underwood. Did he not catch the most balls and have the most yards? I mean, there's 5. Do we not think Tonelli or Marshall? I know. So I think you could even make a case for more. Urabi drinks Coke Zero. Out of all of the Cokes there, if sugar wasn't bad for you, cane sugar, then the regular recipe would be what I would be going for. But you can only have those once in a while. So if it's coming down to Coke Zero and Diet Coke, I'm with you. I would go with Coke Zero. My problem is that I would put the regular sodas up here, but when it starts getting down to Coke Zero and Diet Coke and Diet whatever else, I'd rather just drink water. I mean, sometimes a little Coke Zero and Diet Coke tastes pretty good, but not very often. Sometimes, just sometimes. Hadley's ready. Hadley was a little surprised by Petitti telling the NCAA enough is enough. But I guess he has a soft side to him. So now I'm expecting Sharon to only get his 2 games. I don't think it has anything to do with a soft side. This guy's the ultimate politician over here. Nails Michigan to the cross. And now it's like, they've suffered enough. Okay. That should have never been nailed. They're really a piece of work. I can give nothing to Petitti in terms of, oh, hey, well, you've come around. I mean, what is this guy? You're going to try to ruin your season, and then after it's done, and he's looking, and he's got all the contracts and everything else. He got everybody from Michigan. Look, I got news for you, Petitti. They're still getting booed, and you still should. Now, look, if Michigan, if it comes out like, well, Michigan gets nothing. Michigan is exonerated. They walk out. Free Michigan. I will give then the commissioner a tiny bit of credit for serving up the letter. But even if the Michigan, if it's Sharon with the 2 games, because I'm ready for that. I've factored it in, and then whatever the minor fine or minor violations, it's still a W. I'm not sure going back to say, oh, well, Tony Petitti played a part in that. Am I going to see some quotes from somebody in the College of Infractions Committee? If I see a quote from one of them that says, we heeded the commissioner's words as we were sitting around. Well, then, okay, give him a little bit of a attaboy. I'm not so sure that I feel like that is going to happen. 70 Raven says, why now, Petitti? He skipped due process and allowed the NCAA to do the same, but all of a sudden it's enough. What's up with that? Exactly. I mean, this is a little bit of like, we hear one thing, we see one thing from you, and all of a sudden we're seeing something different. I feel a little bit like a sucker, doing anything to say, oh, hey, thanks, Tony. Thanks for nothing. Robbie's talking about John Mateer, the quarterback from Oklahoma. Looks good on tape, but we have to remember he wasn't playing the best competition. Yeah, I mean, those are the things that you do have to factor in if you are watching film. I watched 5 minutes of John Mateer before Michigan got Bryce Underwood. The names that were up, Mateer was the top guy out there. This was before Oklahoma hired his offensive coordinator, got the package deal and everything else. So I watched 5 minutes of Mateer. I didn't watch a game, but I watched the highlights. He reminded me the first, after why I like to just watch and then say, who did he remind me of? He reminded me of Bo Nix, the Broncos quarterback. He can really air it out. He's got a nice arm. When I was watching him, I thought I would say a funny delivery. Funny in that it's not picture perfect. It's more of like a flip or something. But the more I watched it and I watched the ball coming out of this little flip, it worked for him. And it looked like it had a lot of nice pace on it, the way that he had this. It's almost like he was, a swordsman, the way he, slung the ball and his arm came out there. But, he was able to deliver it. And then he can really move. That's my breakdown of him. But, yeah. Washington State, I don't know. They weren't Power 5. They were Power 5, but then last year they weren't, and that's when he was there. Well, there were just 2 teams. So I don't know if this is an up transfer or not for Mateer. He was one of the best transfers on the board to get. And then he does have his offensive coordinator there now. And that's where we're at when it comes down with Mateer. But, Michigan. No, the other thing I was going to say about him, I'm skipping ahead a little bit, and I'll go back to all of the, Michigan fans and what they have to think about Tony Petitti's plea to the Infractions Committee. But when you look at the different, like, I don't know, Greg McElroy, people that are rating quarterbacks heading into this upcoming season, a lot of the experts, people that are doing these rankings, they have material up really high. We've gone through some of these, these Klubnik, Aller, these guys were not so hot at the beginning of their career, but now, these guys are the top in the country. And some people just put Arch there because Arch was number one overall, but then it's like Arch has his name, and they were just waiting. And the Mannings were like, we want to be absolutely in no rush. In fact, it almost felt like they weren't scared, but they didn't want to put him in there until he was just perfectly seasoned and ready. It'll be interesting if Arch is pretty good, if he bolts, because the way the Mannings, you would think, Peyton stayed for the whole 4 years, sorry. He could have left early. If Arch would stay, I'm interested in that. Scott thinks Mateer is better than Arch. Sorry, I had a call coming in. Old Antoine. It feels like Antoine's the longest standing participant on the feedback of this particular show, and he says it's too much money involved for the NCAA to do something substantial to U of M. His guess that Fox probably called Tony, and if Tony is smart, he's probably advocating for his own Big Ten interest. So Antoine is following the money. Some people say that's always a good thing to do, is follow the money. The only problem with that is, what wasn't following the money your Petitti back in 2023? Wasn't it following the money when you had a championship, you had an undefeated team? I mean, not so much then. Antoine continues talking about getting Dave Portnoy, Michigan man, coming to Fox with the new show. Who do you think the networks want him to talk about? Undoubtedly, it's Michigan and Ohio State. The net worth of not trying to mess this up. The money part, and let's keep Michigan in there now. Yeah, he did what he did, but now he doesn't want any more. Yeah, I like the argument, Antoine. I didn't weigh in on Portnoy heading to Fox. Big Noon. Big Noon has been a total copycat of Game Day. You had Game Day all these years. Everybody watched it. Everybody loved it. They'd sit out and have the crowds in the back. So what does Fox? Well, they put their guys at the stadium and have everybody in the back too. It's like, that was totally copying. ESPN Game Day, they got a Michigan man, Heisman Trophy winner in Desmond. And they've got Herb Street over on the right. They got Desmond on the left. So Big News, they get the Heisman Trophy winner, Charles Woodson. And then they get the Urban. They put him over on the right. Michigan man, Ohio State man. It's the exact same formula. Michigan against Ohio State. And then Game Day last year gets McAfee. And McAfee makes his name on streaming, which is what I am told that if you're under 30 years old, you watch more TV or more content sorry, I had to read something real quick. More content on your phone. So what a huge coup for ESPN, you might not like McAfee, you might whatever, but depending on your age, the advertisers, they love 18 to 34 male. Oh, they just can't get enough of the 18-34 demographic, and that's what McAfee brought them. And they like that demographic so much because those guys just sit and just watch their phones all the time. Now they're like one time watching something on TV that's not even a game. And so what does Big Noon do? They said, well, let's completely go. Let's get his rival. There's an 18 to 34 move. But Antoine, I like how you brought him into the mix. I forgot to talk about it. Scott says Tony P needs to back Michigan. Well, we'll see if Tony P's plea is going to work at all. I said I have a hard time, of patting Tony P on the back when he's the one that exacerbated the situation. And if he doesn't do what he does, there's a lot of not, Michigan State fans and Ohio State fans were always going to go crazy. But if you're just a college football fan and you see the commissioner, suspending a team that's undefeated and their head coach in the teeth of their season, you say, wow, this must be pretty big for people that don't know any better. Tony P is still a villain in my mind. I mean, he made this mess. Now he's throwing a couple of paper towels over there. Reminds me of one of the first basketball games that I ever worked at the Palace, watching the Pistons at a playoff game. Somebody came rushing in late, spilled an orange drink. I was just sitting there all over me. Guy came up and handed me a couple napkins. Looked at him like, oh, thanks. Thanks for the couple napkins, Tony. Tony Petitti takes an extra large soda, dumps it on Michigan's head, and then it's like, oh, okay, wait a second. Here you go. Here's a napkin. More money talk. Petitti doesn't want any postseason bans. Postseason ban? Yeah, who knows? It was this, did Petitti get a whiff of that it was going to be actually worse, where, postseason ban or something, and then that's why he had to, craft up a letter like, oh, wait, I know I acted crazy, but you guys, that was enough. Maybe. Well, isn't this been the question all along, Scott? What does Michigan's punishment end up being? Isn't that what we're all waiting for? The best guess as we sit here on July the 21st, the best guess is that Michigan is going to get no postseason ban. They're vacating nothing. And then it comes down to, because Sharon Moore deleted those texts and he's the second-time offender, that Michigan served up those 2 games. Your guess is as good as mine. My guess is that the Infractions Committee adds another game on there and makes it 3. I don't think they just go for Michigan's game 3 or game 4, because that's never happened before. But look, that's the thing. And anytime I see anybody speaking with authority, you're guessing, and I'm guessing too. But they're a tough unit or a group to make guesses about, because they're inconsistent talking about the Infractions Committee. They, and maybe there's a lot of power brokers and stuff going on behind the scenes, and maybe that's what this is. I'll just restate what I said, Scott. If it comes out being where it's just a 2-game ban, it's just light ban on Moore, no vacated, no postseason bans, and then little minor violations that's not going to hurt Michigan at all when it comes down to recruiting. After we study it, I have to look. Even if it's strongly worded, will they be able to just wiggle through all of that? And then the fine to me, Michigan's going to pass that on to their fans anyway. So, yeah, you hope it's not that big of a fine. If you're one of the fringe workers at Michigan and it's a big fine, you'd say, "Oh, I better not be putting too much stuff out on my desk. Let's just wait and see what's going to happen." But there's a lot of that where if it's just that little small stuff, this is a big W for Michigan. And again, Petitti, if this comes out, they don't do anything. Well, then at that point, they'll say, "Okay, Tony P, nice job." Matt thinks Petitti knows more stuff is coming down and wants to act like he's a good guy. Matt has a bad feeling. Matt, until you see it, I understand, people trying to have a good feeling or a bad feeling with an entity that's very inconsistent and hard to, nail down on a prediction. Yeah. Everybody should have a bad feeling. But look, there's a lot of people that you have to understand there's a lot of people that like this stuff as much as anything else. The behind the scenes, everything that's going on. Smash. Michigan is where the money is. Petitti figured out where his paychecks are coming from. Well, look, we don't know what he was arguing against. If Petitti's letter, if he got whiff, like I believe it was Matt that was saying that it's worse than what the common knowledge or the common narrative is right now of it's going to be light on a fine, whatever the fine is, going to be light violations that Michigan can maneuver. I've always questioned whether it was going to be that or not, but and then the no vacated games or postseason ban. If it was going to be worse, well, then maybe that's why he drafted the letter. I mean, I get that line of thinking. So we all just are going to speculate about that because we don't know. Do we know if Petitti has an idea of what the violations are going to be, and so he's trying to make it look like he's going to be a good guy here? Yeah, those are things that we still have to wait and see. We get that. Matt saying that Larry Ellison, who's the second richest man in the world, is heavily involved with CBS, Paramount, and Skydance. So that's following the money. Did Jolin say, thanks for the money for the quarterback, thanks for the help with these last two recruiting classes, now I need you to get Sharon Moore and the program out of these shackles? Maybe. I like, hey, that adds to it. Ellison flexing, not the B for biceps, the B for billions. Billions. Season 10, Larry Ellison, and the College of Infractions, COI, Committee on Infractions. I got to admit, Matt, you've got a live imagination, but you might be right on top of all of it. Rip some of that stuff I'm not going to bother with. NCAA isn't done. They have to put up a show so they don't look as spineless as they are. I don't know. They're about out the door. There's the new. They're done. It's not CSI, CSC, whatever they are, Sports Commission that's taking over now. They're going to be dealing with it. I think, are they going to want to make one last stand? Maybe. Or can they just go over and wash their hands and they've got to let's just, Ellison's beating down, Petitti's even, reversing course. Let's just get done with it. See you later. I think there's a lot more at work than we're even just, people are reminding me of all these things that are going on behind the scenes. What goes on with the wheeling and dealing of these major power brokers of the billions of dollars at stake. And, we're talking about, you got Michigan State fans, tweeting about a hammer, Michigan fans telling them to go to hell. I mean, there's so much more going on. We're just sitting back, waiting for it to play out. Do they have to put on a show? Maybe. The commissioner has weighed in, and so has Ripstar. There shouldn't be any punishment. Ferris is talking about Buckeye Scoop, who said they had an insider that was sure Michigan with the death penalty. Look, I don't. Some of people that cover Michigan, I have to look and see what they have to say because people are taking what they say and running with it. And I'll just sit here and look like a moron half the time when people are talking about things that other people are saying. But I've put my foot down on going to Eleven's Warrior or reading what Jim Comparoni. I mean, those guys, they're serving their fan base. Two years ago when I saw it was, I had enough of Jim Comparoni. I read it and he's like, oh, Jim Harbaugh's the Antichrist. And then all the Spartan fans, they're all like, yeah, Jim, you're our guy. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, that's going to be we're taking this a little bit too far over here. The whole comp was just sure of it. This guy's the devil. Oh, yeah. And then, that's not even, going. What's up with Ohio State? Woo! So, let's see. Scott just injecting, whether they're just opinions, hot takes. Cole Sullivan will be the breakout player for Michigan. I can see that. I like, TJ Watt type linebacker. Can you keep him off the field? The only way that he might not be is that it's really stacked. I think Rolder's pretty good, Barham's pretty good, and Houseman. And then you got Troy Bowles who comes in. He was hurt in the spring, but so there's the depth. There's 4. Sullivan, is he in that too deep? You're putting him in front of Bowles. You're putting him in front of Jimmy Rolder, who's been around for 4 years, but was on the field when he hasn't been hurt. Rolder's been out there in the biggest games that Michigan's played when he's been healthy. Well, I think they like him. I think he could be, but how do you find a way to get very good players on the field? Yeah, you find a way. It's a good problem to have. Wink will figure it out. AJ, the networks are not spending that kind of money to talk about some of these little schools. There it is. Here we got, at first I thought this was going to be an OSU fan, but no, it's a Michigan fan. The championship, couple beers, like it. There's more for Ferris on the opposition. He has been banned by the opposition. Yeah. Well, I've noticed that is a favorite pastime of a lot of people of going on rival chats and getting after them. Let's see. Antoine's back. He's agreeing with me. Exactly. Tony single-handedly tried to jack up Michigan's season. There's no doubt about that. I'm not throwing a party for Tony Petitti today. Petitti party. I will throw FK a party. 2,060 days since OSU has beat Michigan. That's it. Thank you very much, U of M. He says, if you're here, like the live. Yeah, I mean, let's go. It's free. It's easy to do. It helps the show out. I would also, while Petitti put his plea out, Let me put my plea out. I would like you to join up the Maize and Blue Review. You do that by going to On3. And you go to On3, make sure you pick the Maize and Blue Review because they have Michigan coverage. They have the other side that covers Michigan. They do it their way. We do it our way. I like the way we're doing things. Come and join up with the Maize and Blue Review. Say, what are you doing better? I like the even-handed, knowledgeable approach of my coworkers. Now, look, this is going to sound disparaging to people, drama, Esquire pieces. I mean, there's a lot depending on what you like. But you want firsthand knowledge and not somebody that's just trying to drama some stuff up. I just say this. I go back, and this is not just specifically towards one of our competitors. All of them. When things were getting a little slow, just throw some there's recruiting problems. Let's write a recruiting story problem up. Hey, it's getting slow. Put a story out about how this is all Ward Manuel's fault. And it goes huge. Where's all those? Where are those stories? Where are those? I don't know if we need to do any retractions. So one thing about Michigan, it's the one thing that it's a little bit. I like winners and I like losers when it comes down to sports. Like the great part, politics and things. You get a lot of stuff, and it's like nobody ever wins anything. Sports, you get a winner, you get a loser, you get the scoreboard. There's no ties and everything. This media, you throw out all this stuff. Oh, you get thousands of millions of hits. Oh, the page views. Then it comes down to it's like, well, you guys were wrong on your they're even hot takes, telling everybody. I mean, well, come on. All right. I think that's about it. What we're getting through. Tyler pointing out that Tennessee won with 18 level 1 violations. Michigan had 6. I know. I mean, comparing the Tennessee situation. I mean, with Michigan. I mean, they were. What are you going to do? Scott says, "Will college football be the same with Lee Corso? Did you mean without?" I don't. You'd have to just answer that yourself. I mean, if you're a fan, if you hung around, you watched game day, and you liked Lee Corso, then you're just going to have to make that assessment for yourself. People, enjoyed him putting, a hat on or whatever he was going to do. That was a big deal. I think it's going to be fine. I think Corso should have retired 5 years ago. But I didn't care too much. It was just an opinion. Maybe 10 years ago. But that's it. I mean, if you're asking me, I don't think everybody should be such a big homer on all these shows. I like the information and everything, and I know where people went to school, but I don't need you running around and patting yourself on the back and when I know what you're going to say, why am I even watching? Just talk about the games and what's going to happen. Scott says the NFL loves Mateer. I'll take your word on that. Scott is saying that Mateer is similar to John Elway. No, John Elway could run and he could throw. Sam thinks Drew Aller isn't as good as all the hype. Eller made a lot of progress last year. And you do get better as a quarterback. That's why I am still, let's say, stuck on 9-3. And it's not a hard time because I feel like if Michigan wins 9 games, it's not going to be that great of a season. If they win 10, it's going to be a great season or very good season. That's the line. And yet I go to the quarterback position and I've watched a lot. Aller's one, Klubnik's another, Dante Moore would be enough. Watching these guys that play immediately, and I know that you go down and say, oh, yeah, but what about Trevor Lawrence? Yeah. What about this guy? It's tough to play the quarterback position. It's a lot more difficult when you're a true freshman and you're just being dropped right in there. And I hope he's as great as anybody that's ever played the position, but I'm having a little bit of pause about just Michigan's back and it's going to be great. And they're going to, head to the college football playoff on the arm of a 17-year-old right now. It's hard for me. And I like him. Poppy, what you trying to get into? All right. Couple more. 18-month investigation. Could have been an email. Hey, Michigan, looks like you're bending the rules. Maybe don't do that. Okay. Thanks. How much money is being spent on this investigation? There's a lot there. That's a good one. Ferris says the headset sounds great. Hey, you know what? I really don't know what happened. It wasn't working, and it was saying, at first I thought it was my problem, and then after 3 days, I saw that it was the system that I was working problem, and I thought, well, I guess that's good that it wasn't actually me. I missed an interview with Phil Steele because of what was going on there, but maybe now I'll give him a call, see if I can reschedule. Got a few newcomers on here. Let's see what they have to say. TD Great River. I like it. Let's see what you have to say. Consider, what if Tony Petitti knows the NCAA penalties are going to be harsher than anticipated, and this plea is just theater? His advocacy for a Big Ten school makes political sense in that context. Yes, somebody was indicating that earlier, that this could just be a show by Petitti because he knows and everybody hates him here. But then, he's thinking like, oh, look at, he's standing up for him. Well, not really. This happened back in June. They don't have to listen to them. This has been contentious between Petitti, the Committee on Infractions, Michigan. But it's of course it's news. It feels to me like I would have rather have seen this than see nothing. So yeah. That's the position that I'm in. I'm not sitting around, throwing a parade. I'm ready to throw a parade. Like I said, if Michigan gets, let's say, scot-free, I don't know, they've already, as Petitti has pointed out, had to serve that 3-game suspension. But if they come out and there's nothing, what a day that will be. You Michigan fan, like I said, everybody's vindicated then. The biggest Michigan, everyone's vindicated. Even if it's just what we have, what the common narrative is right now. Light suspension, it's violations, fine, nothing vacated. That and no postseason ban. It's not fun continuing to say that because it almost feels like that I'm, hey, why do you keep saying that? That'll feel like a win. And the news today felt like a little bit of a win. It felt like that. But like TDGR is pointing out, we just might be suckers taking in any news and running with it and acting like it's something great. Smash like the metaphor. Smash, it was a playoff game. I don't know. I would guess it was against the Hawks, but I don't remember that. But maybe it was. I remember who did. I remember the whole circumstance now. It was the late Drew Sharp, who I didn't like. I would after that, but I didn't really know Drew Sharp. But he was I always used to say when I was on the air in Ann Arbor, I never miss a Drew Sharp column. Never miss it. And somebody would say, "Oh, you never miss it?" Yeah, because I never read it. Because it's predictable. Big Ten sucks. Michigan sucks. Lions suck. And, that was his take. But so he spills his drink all over me and then offers me up a napkin. And I'm like, look at this guy. He was running late. And you know who was sitting right next to me? Sharp to the right, who spills the drink on me. To the left was this big center that played for the Bulls named Bill Cartwright. He's a 7-footer, I think. And what I remember is Cartwright, when the napkin came over to me, he said, "He's lucky that wasn't me." I was thinking, yeah, I wish it would. I wish it would have been you, Bill. Bill Cartwright would have taken Boudini and maybe taken him out. We got more Michigan, Petitti, Committee on Infractions talk. We'll see. It seems that Petitti borrowed Delaney's playbook. Delaney advocated for Ohio State with Tattoo Gate, even though he probably knew bad things were headed for Columbus. Yeah, you could be right. Look, that could be there's no problem. Everybody's going to have an opinion on it. If you're just tuning in and say, well, what's your opinion? My opinion is that Tony Petitti started all this. Tony Petitti blew this up. Even if it, whatever you think of it, little bit bigger than little, medium-sized controversy, gigantic controversy. Petitti made it the biggest controversy and scandal ever. Sorry. I'll call her in 5 minutes. Sometimes it works. Sometimes I'll call in 5 minutes. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. All right. So yeah, Petitti makes this into the biggest scandal of all time. That's what he did by suspending Harbaugh for at Penn State, at Maryland, at Ohio State when they were undefeated. Don't forget that. He makes it the biggest scandal in sports. And now, after the fact, and it's coming down to the wire, he's like, oh, well, let's take it easy on Michigan. They've suffered enough. I don't know. You're sitting around acting like the commissioner is doing a good job or something in this situation. This guy's a real piece of work. The punters. Seems like the punters, when he tunes into the show, gets in it he starts watching at 2:45. There's no problem with that. The punters thinks Petitti's letter is largely motivated by financial considerations. The initial decision to suspend Harbaugh stemmed from the ignorance and yielding to pressure from angry Big Ten teams. Yeah, well, he should have. It wasn't his first rodeo. It could be in the sense that the other Big Ten partners were acting a fool, and he should have known that. But he should have realized that the financial considerations were big, of Michigan, getting to the college football playoff, of Michigan potentially winning it all. Michigan having that chance and him cutting out their legs for the last 3 games in an unprecedented move. I think the only problem is, you say with ignorance and yielding to the pressure. I mean, he should have been motivated by the financial considerations. That's why all of this, and I'm following the money. I was following the money before. How many teams were in the Big Ten then? 14? So it was 13 against 1? Rashad checking in. Lions players already going down with injuries on the D-line. The preseason hasn't even started yet. Shaking my head. Yeah, every team has to deal with a lot of that kind of stuff. But, yeah, I have to admit that the Onwuzurike injury coupled with Ragnow retiring. Am I missing somebody else? Having to replace another different offensive lineman. Yeah, this is the kind of how it works. You feel like the window's wide open. Hey, it's championship time. Let's go. And then all of a sudden you start taking on water, getting a lot of things going on. And I feel like if Aiden Hutchinson doesn't get hurt last year, that the Lions go to the Super Bowl. I also feel like if Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson didn't dial up Jameson Williams throwing a pass, that they would have beaten the Commanders and come back and won that game. I also think that if they would have kicked the field goal the second time against the Niners to stem the hemorrhaging against the Niners when they blew that second half lead, that they would have made the Super Bowl that year. We started on the Lions, but I'm looking forward to football starting on all levels. Let's go. The Lions are for another time. We're talking Petitti. Here's someone who's a well thought through, level headed, and it's True Blue Tom. Newly retired. Means maybe we'll see him more at Michigan games holding signs, which I always enjoy when I'm watching TV. And I'm like, hey, there's True Blue Tom. What's his sign say? Go Blue. Let's go, Tom. Tom says that Tony P would be smart to say what has been recorded because enough has been done without process. Yeah, that was the people didn't like that was it a rush to judgment what Tony P did to Michigan in those last 3 regular season games in 2023? I think even a Spartan fan would have to say, yes, it was a rush to judgment. I know they like to laugh and talk about, well, due process. What are you guys talking about? And you would think that Michigan State fans would know all about due process. I actually was sitting here thinking, I'm probably only going to do 15 minutes because what am I going to say about Tony Petitti? Rip is talking about the AD. Politics and sports go hand in hand. Congress shows us that on the regular. I've never used on the reg, but I kind of feel like I'm going to. And it's all because of you, TD. I'm going to start rolling it out there like that. Not just one, but 2 from True Blue Tom today. Anything else at this point is destructive to the conference and college football. Get it right. Feel like that should be on one of your posters, Tom. Get it right. Get it right. There it is again. Let's do it. Aller will be better this year just from the fact that Penn State got better in the wide receiver room. He needed a wide receiver, you're right. Although he lost one of his wide receivers as well. Oh, here's Ralph. Ralph, I looked up. Cat, you probably know this. I'm 100% sure you do. Catwoman and Catgirl, they're different. For people that were wondering. Ralph says he sent it before the hearing. That is key. He isn't responding to something he might know and we don't. Wasn't it during the hearing? That's where they read it? That's a key point. They were having the meetings about Michigan. And then they're like, they had Cotter Stalions there, whatever he was saying. And then they're like, wait a second, we've got a note from the commissioner of the Big Ten. Michigan has suffered enough. Take that. The part about leaks and knowing what they're going to do, even when, they have ideas, I would think, Ralph. It's an interesting point that you're bringing up. But Petitti might know a lot more about those proceedings and this investigation when they're arguing it, listening to everything. He's going to know a lot more. So I still think that the possibility that he thought there actually was, a thumping coming and then he was doing this just to try to save a little face, it's possible. I want to say anything's possible. That seems pretty cliche. Anything's possible. That's it. Let's see. Tony P. Tony P loves Tyler. This had zero to do with the players on the field, zero vacation of anything or postseason ban. I do think Sharon will be suspended a few more games. I know, based on what the NCAA has done in the past, that's why people say with such authority that because the players weren't there, that there's not going to be any vacating. And I'm not here to, that's a well-reasoned thought. Because it's never happened, and because when it does, it always has to do with illegal players. That is enough for me. My thing on this always is having to predict the Committee on Infractions is difficult if you watch enough of this and you don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. And when I leaned on what has happened in my entire life, the last time it was in 2023, and it was heading into those last 3 games when there was a notion that the Big Ten commissioner would suspend Jim Harbaugh. And I said, Balder. I said, well, I don't know if I said Balder. I said, bull. There's no way. It's never happened before. Why would it happen now? These guys, they know who butters their bread. This team's going for a championship. It's Michigan. You're the commissioner. You're supposed to be backing Michigan. There's no due process. There's no way that this commissioner is going to be suspending a coach in the middle of a championship run. So while I get it's very well thought out and I understand, oh yeah, there wouldn't be any of this. I'm one that's just way, I don't know. I get it. But things have been happening on the reg that have me thinking that it's too tough to predict when it comes down to it. Woo! That's it. Finishing up. I asked people that are big into recruiting, they're really enjoying this recruiting cycle for Michigan, and why not? They've got a top 10 class. Things are going really well for Michigan and their recruiting department. Sharon Moore is killing it. I asked when people start paying attention to 27, and the responses were when Michigan gets someone, they start paying attention. The response was when you have a state chock full of high-end prospects is when you start paying. And that's apparently what the state of Michigan has in 27. Not so much this year, but next year, yes. So, yeah. And when the ball is rolling and things are going great, there's never a bad time to, if a report came out tomorrow that a 28 quarterback has been offered by Michigan and he was accepting, I don't know, can you do that? And that Larry Ellison was giving a freshman in high school $10 million, people would be pretty excited. They don't do that on the reg. Louis Esposito is the son of Lou Esposito, who is Michigan's defensive line coach. And Lou Espo, Low-S. I'm looking at all the different nicknames he could have. Louis Esposito, Little S, Little Espo, Little Louie. Little Lou is 6'4", 255. Little Louie is an interior offensive line prospect, plays his high school ball at Saline. And Lil Lou is in for 27. The seal is broken. They are good to go for 27. That's number one. So that's going to do it for this show. We have football to watch. This is unofficially, but it's unofficially the start of the college football season. There's already been the Big 12. Talk about the SEC's like, when we have our media days, that's the unofficial start. No, it's when the Big 10, we're Big 10 country, it's when they have their media days. Actually, when Michigan speaks, which is Thursday, that's when everything officially will start. But unofficially, when you have 18 teams, you spread it over 3 days and you have it out in Vegas. And only this time, everything that happens there is going to be spilled out and everybody's going to know. Will somebody get in trouble in Vegas from the Big Ten? Will it be, let's see who it would be. I don't think anybody from Michigan. I don't think it would be, I would say, the easy one would be Ryan Day. He gets into trouble, but no, I don't. There's Jonathan Smith loses all of his money at the roulette table. I don't like any of this. I don't like any of those stories. Brett Bielema. As somebody who's trying, maybe Brett has slimmed down, but just like me, if somebody came in and said that I was attacking the buffet or something like that, I'd say, that's kind of mean-spirited, but I get where you're coming from with it. So, Bielema loves fried chicken. I do know that from the time he was at Arkansas. Saw a couple of my relatives told me, yeah, I don't know how he's going to do, but he likes the fried chicken. He likes the fried chicken in Vegas, maybe. Is he going to get in trouble? That we'll come up with at a later date. So that's going to do it for this show. Thanks so much for watching. My plea, like Petitti's plea, is that Michigan has suffered enough. You Michigan fans, you suffered enough. You want to get the inside scoop and have it done with the pros and have a good time. Well, that's the Maize and Blue review. Go to on3.com and hit that Maize and Blue review. That's the one you want to click onto, and we'll see you over there on the Den. Until Wednesday, Scar will join us then. He was off today. Did just get a text from him. We'll talk to you then. Everybody have a great day and see you.